So, my name is Carl Fravel. I'm the Director of IT at Canal Barge Company. I've been in software development for something over 40 years, most of that time in management of teams. And our contact information is here. The slides will be available later if you want to contact us.
Yeah, I'm Slobodan Loha. I am a software engineer at Canal Barge, and what I do there is I manage a few internal employees, contractors, do some scoping of projects, do the coding, testing. So because we have a small team, everybody pitches in, so we really work like a startup with our resources we have and budget we have, and we run about 20 projects a year. It's a small team.
Canal Barge is a privately held company. It's 80 years old, and we operate inland marine transportation business and related things. I think how we differentiate is being smart about the use of information and doing really great management. There's a lot of people who have barges and boats, but I think the reason why we're probably the most profitable business in that company is in that space is because of how we manage things. Very quickly, the Canal Barge moves cargo on the Mississippi River and other. I'll show you a map in a moment. And we have and by the way, barge transportation is the greenest form of transportation, the least amount of energy used per ton mile of movement. If you move slowly, don't have too much friction. So we move slowly. Our IT tries to move a little faster. We have a terminal facility in Chicago. You could call it a tank farm, but what's important is barges, trains, and trucks can all come there, transload cargo, or put in and out of storage. We also have a laboratory there at that terminal. We do analysis of petrochemicals and water and other things, not only for our terminal, but for municipalities and other companies. And finally, we are probably the largest provider of what's called harbor services in the Chicago area. In other words, if you bring in a big tow of barges and you break it up, you have to store them somewhere, you have to get them loaded or unloaded with cargo, you need to get them hooked back up, you need them moved around. We have a fleet of small boats there that do that kind of work in the Chicago area. We're between 800 and 900 employees, and coincidentally about that same number of barges. We have nearly 50 towboats. A towboat pushes a tow of barges. So you bunch of barges together, you lash them together, and you push it with a towboat. So little bit hard to digitize that business, but we are finding very interesting ways of doing that. As I say, we operate on the Gulf Coast, up the Mississippi River, Illinois River. We go as far as Chicago and Pittsburgh. So a lot of movement of cargo. So we had a couple of business problems that we wanted to solve for this project. One was we have sensors on the boats that can tell if the engine's getting overheated or if the oil pressure is too low or something like that, and they set off an alarm on the boat if something goes wrong. We wanted to monitor that data from shore and see trends and see how to improve fuel economy and profitability, but we didn't have a way of doing that. We didn't really have an IOT solution. And then the other thing is, like Steve said, we work on about 20 projects a year. Most of those are legacy projects. Some of them are new things, but the development patterns for all of those were different. Some of it's Domino, some of it X Pages, some of it's Java, some of it. And we wanted to more standardize the DevOps process for that, start to get this stuff standardized.
And we also wanted to improve our quality. So if we have a small team, we're tasked to deliver. We have to move fast, so we want to get some good quality assurance and testing in place too.
We have no automated testing. So the business case for analytics is if you can catch something that's going wrong long before it goes wrong, you have more time to replace it. We have 2 generators on every boat, right? You don't really want the generator to fail even if the alarm went off 10 seconds earlier because suddenly you have this massive amount of cargo that's free on the river. So you want to know well in advance that something's not looking right and get preventive action in place. And then also, obviously we wanted to do create greater customer satisfaction within our company about our IT solutions.
We started internal R&D sessions internally. That was basically Carl and I in our company, just to see what's out there. We know we wanted to DevOps. We knew the industry was changing, so we wanted to not be behind. So we started, Carl is our IT director. He actually built a helpbot by himself in Bluemix. And it's right now, where is it?
It's hooked up to our employee portal.
Yeah.
Answers questions about not only IT things, but also HR and other things.
Yeah, so we tested a few various services in Bluemix, and then we did some research individually, shared through, we already were customers IBM connections, and document our outcomes and connections, shared with the rest of the teams. Okay, so resource and networking, we apologize for the formatting here. So software cannot replace a great team. So it doesn't matter how much you spend on the software, how much it costs, if you don't have a good team to navigate it, you know, you're not going to have the greatest outcomes in efficiency. So at Canal Barge, we have a small budget, a limited team, and we're all hungry, you know, to do good things, and it's just an ethics and culture, great leadership. Our IT director, he actually worked for Borland. If you guys are Java developers, he managed the Java 1 project at Borland. So we have a great leadership, and then we have a great development staff. So together, we want to do great things, but we have to work under a small budget. And part of that is going to conferences like these. We met a business partner here that's coincidentally sponsoring. They're not paying us to be up here, but we met them at Interconnect in 2016.
Royal Cyber.
Yeah, we met Royal Cyber there. Thank you guys for getting us here too, because we hired them for another project. They proved themselves on another project. We brought them back on for DevOps because they had the right up here. They had the experience and the staff to help us in every part of our IT technology stack, from doing DevOps, computing, modernization, test automation. So then Royal Cyber had a great team. And then the Chicago IBM staff, they also host these meetups, and they teach customers and students from colleges, anybody who wants to come there and learn about Bluemix. So we started attending those sessions. And then with our R&D sessions, we're like, hey, let's get IBM together with Royal Cyber and our staff. Let's tell them what we want to do and what our vision is. And then together, we collaborated in a 2-day workshop where IBM was telling us their services. Here's how you get up and running with them. Royal Cyber was getting their resources together. Yeah, we have someone there on that topic, on this topic. And then in those 2 days, we started coding on the 3rd day with that methodology, getting 3 good teams together.
So our methodology for transparency and we're a distributed team in spite of being small, is to use IBM connections. We use it for design work, we use it for capturing ideas and results of meetings, prospects, and basically pretty much all team collaboration work. Also, although we as a company have been using SameTime for a long time, we were asked by IBM to beta test Watson Workspace, and we found it to be a very nice tool for not only being able to chat with somebody who isn't near you, but being able to go back and look at the transcript. It's persistent, and Watson AI looks at it and says, these things here were part of this topic, whereas these things here were part of this topic, same in all moments, and allows you to have somebody join the team later and go back and use the conversation as intellectual property to get them up to speed. So we found that to be a great tool. You may be familiar with GitHub or Jira for issue tracking. We use Assembla, which is a lightweight web tool. And we use it for all those different categories of things, but we don't have a requirements tracing methodology yet.
And then we used IBM Bluemix. We adopted containers and microservices, so we have a lot of legacy apps 90-year-old business. They started with technology with the AS400 back in the 80s. So to bring this company to a new digital world, we adopted microservices right away, using containers, building pipelines, so we have a small team that can click buttons to move software from one stage to the other to get to development, really to get to a viable product. We also used the IBM Bluemix clouded service to persist our data. It's unstructured data. That's where our sensor data is going now. We also have SQL, so they pretty much have everything you need for data persistence. And our code base is so far mostly Java using Spring Boot. So that's the stack that we use. It's very quick and easy to stand up microservices there. Tell us about the timeline.
Yeah, so this was a very fast project. The conversations we had with IBM and with DevOps were a series of workshop days in mid-July of this year. And we started the IoT project specifically in early August. I wrote up a set of specs because I kind of understood the business need, and I handed them off to Steve. We looked at it a little bit and figured out what the roadmap would need to be to a minimum viable product. And mid-August, we brought on a full-time Royal Cyber developer to do the heavy lifting of the coding. Now our team was at 3, 2 of them part-time. And a month later, September 14th, we had our first production data moving into Tableau for analysis and graphing. I'll show you a little excerpt of one of those results from September 14th. Then we took this thing that was working and producing a result that boat engineering team wanted, but they'd never seen anything like this. So they didn't really know what they wanted in advance. We took it to them and said, okay, now we have something that's working. What else do you want? And we worked with them to refine it and make some changes to their specs and to stabilize it. And about November 1st, we put it into change management and officially in production for that team. So that's a pretty fast project from concept to putting it in a maintenance mode in production.
And I'd just like to add that we did not have the concern of standing up servers, environments. We were able to move that quick because we just had to work on the business logic and the business problem and forget about all the IT infrastructure problems.
It's running the smart cloud, running an IBM software in Bluemix.
Yeah,
the services there are really easy to use and very fast. So September 14th, we graphed the previous 2 days of data from a number of boats, a number of sensors. This is one boat, 4 of its sensors. One of the business requirements were that the captains on the boats had been told to try this year staying at under 1,500 RPMs for fuel, as a fuel economy experience, except when you're doing intensive maneuvers, when you have to do a lot more. And you can see from the RPMs that they're pretty much doing that. So that was one of the business requirements. They wanted to be able to see that over time. There wasn't really a way to do that, in short. So some of the benefits from this project were we were able to start producing some real business intelligence based on IoT that we had no access to before, and for prevention of critical system failures and also for profitability use of the boats. And we also proved out a very rapid process and good management process under Bluemix for new application development. A complete pipeline there from development through to production. It was, I think, the fastest project in our company history. The coding was 30 days. The entire project life from here's what we ought to do to it's being in production and maintenance mode was 100 days. It's pretty fast. A team of 1 full-time and 2 part-time people and some very good talent from Royal Cyber. And best of all, our boat engineering staff is really happy with this result.
So the tools, they make the difference. So I think today it doesn't matter how big your company is and how big your staff is and all the money they throw at the software you're using. If you're faster and you get there first, people are going to start following your methodology so they can get there quick. There's no more big company, little guy. It's who gets there first now. So that's what we're seeing through a bunch of seminars, and I think we're in a position to be a disruptor because we could be lean and mean, work like a startup, and deliver value.
So we want to adopt this DevOps methodology for all our new development going forward. And we are now putting in place using Selenium to do automated testing of user interfaces on our applications in Bluemix. They're running in Bluemix and talking to apps that may not be in Bluemix. And using SOAP UI to do automated testing there of APIs in our various apps. We also want to take the help bot that is based on the Watson conversation service to the next level of how user feedback about the answers they got can help train, so the learning side of the AI. Another thing we have is we have decades of unstructured documentation. You know, boat manuals, policies, best practices, decisions, contracts, and we want to begin learning how to, on a light level in a small team, begin ingesting that as a corpus of knowledge that is available to the help bot and for other uses internally through AI. And there's other ways we want to use it. Right?
So what we want, so we now know that we have this enormous amount of data we're generating. Now we need data engineering. So we're going to have to look at our data engineering approaches and try to not to break existing reports while adding on new unstructured data as we continually grow and get more requirements from our customers or our internal users. And we want to apply, so we're going to get data from everywhere. We have transaction data, historical data. Then we want to put that data in context with the weather. There's APIs where you can actually take your data, go back to some time and use that weather data and check out simulations, right? We learned through this conference that we need requirements tracking and change management. So this code that's here, where did it come from, who approved it, and trace it back to the requirements. This is new for us. We get requirements, we document in IBM connections. When Carl told you that he spec'd out the IoT project, I was already engaged with Royal Cyber on our original DevOps microservices project. And then within a few weeks, Carl tells me about this IoT project, and it was completely different than a web business application. We're using socket connections, Ethernet to a PLC, right? So we had to switch gears quickly. So where's the history of the requirements tracking, and where do we leave off on that last project? So we are a lean, mean team. We started on that July 17th. Even though he interrupted us, we were able to finish in a month or 2 months and get that operational. However, I think this is important, and we need to get to managing that part of our process.
Right.
So,
we have some applications that are 30 years old. Somebody comes to us and says, hey, we need this new capability. So what other stakeholders are we going to affect when we make that change? That's an area that we need to improve in.
Yep.
Be able to trace that back to the original other stakeholders. So how are we doing on time?
We got 8 minutes for questions. If you have any questions for us.
Sorry, I only just arrived back. So I was presenting next door.
Yeah.
You're not part of the MBA track, are you?
We're the community track.
Community track.
Oh, community
Yeah,
track.
case studies, basically.
All right. Sorry, has anyone got any questions? My track finished, I think, with Bruce with the thing.
And we're open for suggestions how we could do that requirements gathering part, because that's an area that we are going to be scouting out. So
I just want to kind of reiterate something I've said, which is that you know, the things you're seeing here today about Jazz and the very rich set of tools for managing the life cycle of a project is very well suited to large teams and to mode 1 projects. But if you have something you need to do quickly and it's more of a proof of concept or an experiment you're wanting to look at some new technologies, maybe some new ways of doing things and doing so quickly, IBM Bluemix is a really great opportunity. And it's not this or that, because many of the technologies work between both.
We left out the cost
Oh,
of,
yeah.
of
Yeah.
Bluemix. So how much did it cost us?
Bluemix cost us $0 until we went into production. So all that development time, all trying out the various tools, getting everything set up, was within their free tier. So now as we're starting to accumulate data, we'll start to pay for some cloud and storage, a little bit of CPU time. But,
Yeah, and it's not much either.
And it's very affordable. So it's a very inexpensive, very quick, very easy to use infrastructure. It has the latest technology.